Listen closely because what I'm about to tell you contradicts everything the survival industry has sold you for the past 3 decades. You think mobility equals survival. Bug out bags, escape routes, rally points, evacuation plans. You've mapped every exit, cached supplies along your route, memorized alternative paths. You're ready to move at a moment's notice. You're also building the exact psychological framework that gets people killed in the first 72 hours. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your obsession with mobility is actually immobility disguised as preparedness. Every bug-out bag is a confession that you don't understand the one principle that determines who persists and who becomes a statistic. The survivors you need to study aren't the ones who move fastest. They're the ones who recognized when movement itself was the trap. Your assumptions end here. Your plans get interrogated because you don't get to choose when crisis hits. You only get to choose whether you understand the difference between tactical retreat and strategic paralysis. Part 1. The 3 movement myths that create casualties. Myth 1. The mobility premium delusion. You've internalized this formula. Prepared person plus vehicle plus route equals safety through movement. Let me show you the mathematics that destroys this equation. Average highway evacuation during Hurricane Rita. Vehicles moved 0.7 miles per hour, less than 1 mile per hour. People sat in metal boxes for 18 hours to travel distances they could have walked in 6. Your bug-out vehicle requires functional roads, maintained infrastructure, institutional continuity. That's exactly what collapses first. That vehicle you've meticulously maintained, it's optimized for a world with gas stations every 15 miles, clear roads, and rule of law. Remove those conditions and you're piloting a 2-ton liability that broadcasts your position, restricts your path options to pavement, and requires resources you cannot generate. Your mobility plan just made you less mobile. Myth 2. The distance safety fantasy. Your bug-out location is 200 miles from population centers, far enough to avoid chaos, close enough to reach on one tank. Beautiful math, completely backwards logic. Every other person with identical plan creates a spoke pattern radiating outward from cities along major routes toward rural areas. You're not escaping the crowd. You're joining a predictable flow that local populations will recognize, track, and respond to. Think about the perspective from the destination. Rural communities watching city folks arrive with vehicles full of supplies, no local knowledge, no relationships, and explicit plans to consume local resources they didn't help produce. You're not evacuating to safety. You're becoming an invasion force. 3% of 10 million people is 300,000 attempting to move through fixed infrastructure simultaneously. Every bridge becomes a choke point. Every rural town gets overwhelmed. Every resource cache gets depleted by people ahead of you. Your escape route is actually a queue, and you don't know your position in line. Myth 3. The prepared movement paradox. Your bug-out bag weighs 35 pounds. You've trained with it, optimized every item. You've also volunteered for the most physically demanding strategy possible while advertising that you're carrying concentrated resources. Walking with 35-pound pack, approximately 400 calories per hour. You've got maybe 5 hours before your metabolizing muscle and cognitive function degrades. That assumes perfect conditions, flat terrain, no stress, no weather extremes, no threats. Meanwhile, that pack signals to anyone observing, this person has gear worth taking and no fixed position to defend it from. You're a mobile loot drop with a countdown timer. The people who persist aren't carrying 35 pounds of equipment. They're carrying 10 pounds of essentials and intimate knowledge of every resource within 5 miles. Part 2. The strategic stillness framework. Here's the paradigm inversion. The ultimate survival move is often not moving at all. Not because you're unprepared, because you've calculated that movement consumes more resources than it generates, creates more risk than it mitigates, and sacrifices advantages you already possess. The stay-go algorithm. Before every potential movement, run these calculations. Resource math, current resources minus movement costs versus destination resources, minus journey risks, minus integration requirements. Knowledge differential, your detailed awareness here versus general knowledge there. Every mile moved replaces intimate environmental knowledge with uncertainty. Network value. Established relationships and community integration here versus starting from zero there. Threat assessment. Known threats here versus unknown threats during movement versus unknown threats at destination. The sophisticated operator doesn't ask, should I bug out? They ask, what does cost-benefit analysis indicate? And when does that calculation shift? The deep integration strategy. While everyone practices evacuation, you practice becoming indispensable where you are. You learn local water sources intimately across seasons. You build genuine reciprocal relationships before crisis. You develop location-specific knowledge that takes years to accumulate. Which houses are abandoned, which properties have wells, which people can be trusted. Your bug-out bag doesn't build trust. Your consistent presence and reliable contributions do. Counterintuitive truth. Supplies create targets, skills create options. Every item you stockpile depletes and requires defense. Skills don't deplete. Knowledge doesn't expire. The person who knows 40 edible plants never runs out of food knowledge. The person who understands water purification can make contaminated water safe anywhere. You're building renewable resources instead of depleting stockpiles. Part 3. The practical recalibration. 2 immediately actionable exercises. Exercise 1. The 72-hour immobility challenge. Don't leave your property for 72 hours. Use only resources on site. Eat only food you have. Solve every problem with only tools and materials present. Document every moment you want to leave. This reveals your actual dependency and builds resource constraint problem solving. Exercise 2. The local knowledge audit. Draw a 1-mile radius around your location. Answer without internet. How many water sources exist? Which neighbors have useful skills? Where are natural shelter locations? What wild food sources exist by season? Which people could be trusted under pressure? If you can't answer comprehensively, you don't know your area well enough to defend staying, which means you're not prepared to leave either. Spend 20 hours over the next month building this knowledge. Walk every street. Observe everything. The choice point. Here's your decision. You can keep perfecting your bug-out plan, hoping you'll never discover whether mobility works under real chaos. Or you can build strategic stillness capability, deep integration, local knowledge, relationship networks that make staying viable when everyone else flees. One keeps you ready to leave. The other makes you prepared to stay. The collapse doesn't ask what you prefer. It tests what you built. Most people will keep practicing leaving because leaving feels like action. The sophisticated minority will practice staying because they understand that roots are defensive infrastructure, community is force multiplication, and local knowledge is renewable advantage. Be the person who's so well integrated, so deeply knowledgeable, so genuinely valuable where they are that moving would be strategic downgrade. The wasteland doesn't care about your mobility. It only cares whether you understand where your actual advantages exist and whether you've built them deep enough to matter. Strategic stillness. It's not what they're selling. It's what actually works. Your choice. Make it count.